research talk series. It's a great pleasure to have Dave Hardisty and Kirsten Appelt with us here today as part of their visit to the University of St. Gallen. Just quickly about Dave's vita. So Dave started off with his academic career, I guess, with a BA at Stanford, BA in psychology, right? He then moved to Paris to do a research master's before returning then to the US again, where he did a PhD at Columbia together with Eric Johnson and Elke Weber, where he studied decision making, right? Mm. He then moved to Stanford again, where he did a postdoc. And eventually in 2013, he became an assistant professor at the University of British Columbia in Canada. This is also where we met then nearly 10 years ago. Mm. And he's now an associate professor of marketing and behavioral science at the University of British Columbia. In terms of research focus, I think your research is mostly at the area, or actually at the intersection between psychology and marketing, right? More specifically, judgment, decision-making, and consumer behavior. And I think your research, for example, is known for temporal discounting, how we do value things that lie in the future, for instance, but you're also an expert when it comes to sustainability and how to nudge people towards more sustainable choices and more sustainable behavior. A final thing I'd like to highlight is your choice of methods. So I think most of your research actually takes place quite frequently outside the lab, which is something I love. So with direct practical implications, but also with cool methods, as we will see today, with longitudinal field studies, for instance. So I look forward to your talk. Thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you so much, Emmanuel. And thanks for hosting me. It's a real pleasure to be here. Emmanuel, as he mentioned, was a PhD student visiting UBC, and we had hoped to maybe convert him into a full-time student, but he came back to Switzerland. And now, being here, I can understand why he came back. Such a beautiful country, and the institute and everything here at St. Gallen. Now that he's here, it's a really wonderful place. It's my first time here in Switzerland, so thanks for hosting me. And yeah, today I'm going to be talking about a joint project together with co-authors, Kirsten Appelt, who's right here. So she'll probably answer half of the questions. If I can't handle it, I'll like, save me. And also working with a local energy company, BC Hydro. So if you hear me mentioning hydro, this is actually not a water, it's an energy company because it's hydroelectric power. So we'll dive right in, and let me make sure my pointer is working. There we go. And so this project that I'll be presenting today, it's a bit different than maybe some of the other projects you've seen in that it's a kind of combination of both theoretic interest and applied, right? We want to see what works in the real world, but also learn some new things about how to encourage people to make more sustainable choices. We partnered with this energy company and had the opportunity to measure actual energy usage at houses for a full year, 1 hour energy increments, right? And so this was a golden opportunity. We wanted to make sure we found something that worked, but also wanted to do something new and learn something new. And this is something I know from discussing with some of you in meetings this morning, some of the PhD students here, you have similar issues, right? Where you have a field study, it's a great opportunity, it's a lot of work, right? And so how do you approach this? And so as part of this talk today, I'm gonna do things a bit differently in that I'm gonna attempt to have a bit more of the kind of true story of the project, where we also talk about some of the pre-work that's sometimes hidden, the pilot testing, finding out about things that don't work, right? And some of the wrinkles. So rather than presenting a tidy story where it's like, oh, we had the perfect prediction and we ran the perfect study and here's the perfect results, right? We have a little bit more of the story of how it really went along the way that I think will be helpful, hopefully also to some of you as you're working on these new field studies. And we'll do a couple of predictions. So be ready. I'll ask you at certain points to make a prediction as to what worked best. And this is a working paper in progress. We're writing it up right now. So I'm very happy to be presenting it here to get your feedback, your questions, your criticisms, your suggestions for improvement, for additional analyses. So please don't hesitate, jump in, ask questions. And in fact, it makes me feel better. I feel more connected to the audience and that people are listening a little bit if you ask questions and make some criticisms. So don't be shy. Go ahead and raise your hand at any point if there's something you don't understand or an idea you have. So please just jump in. And as I mentioned, this is very much a group project. These are my co-authors. Kirsten is right here. And then this is a former PhD student, Sid Mukherjee. He's now assistant professor at McGill University. Yanwen Wang is our quant colleague faculty, and Jiaying Zhao. And then we had our BC Hydro collaborators. So some of the motivation for this project came from the movie An Inconvenient Truth. And I'm going to date myself a little bit, but I'm hoping there's at least one maybe older person here who's also seen it. Has anybody here seen An Inconvenient Truth? Oh, excellent. Okay. You've seen it too. Good. Yeah, because yeah, we're oldies together, right? We're grandparents' age now, right? And so this was, in case you don't know, it's a movie about climate change featuring Al Gore, former presidential candidate. And for a lot of us of a certain age, it was kind of a turning point to realize how big this climate change problem was. Climate change is the inconvenient truth, right? And so that's what this movie is all about. And at the very end of this movie, there's a bunch of suggestions of things you can do or should do to address climate change, right? And maybe you've seen other, if you haven't seen this movie, maybe you've seen other ones where it's like, oh, there's this huge problem, and now what do you do, right? So it says, okay, we can solve climate change. Here's how to start. Okay, buy energy efficient appliances and light bulbs. Change your thermostat to reduce energy for heating and cooling. Weatherize your house, increase insulation, get an energy audit, recycle. If you can, buy a hybrid car, walk or ride a bicycle, use light rail and mass transit, switch to renewable sources of energy. And it goes on and on for like about 20 minutes. Call your power company, vote for leaders to solve the crisis, write to Congress, run for Congress, become part of president, reduce our dependence on foreign oil, help farmers, right? There's kind of one thing after another. And I was wondering, is and this one's a little more self-serving, encourage everybody to see the movie. Okay. And so I was wondering, is this really the best way to get people to change, to say, okay, here's this menu of all these different behaviors. You should do this and this and this and this. And is that effective? Or might it be more effective to only focus on one behavior that's really important, right? When you show people this huge menu, are they going to say, well, I can buy a light bulb and then maybe stop there, and you're not going to run for Congress or whatever, right? So is it better to just ask for one behavior change request or many different things, right? At the same time, if you only ask one thing, you're maybe limiting yourself and missing out on some big things. So this is kind of an open question, and one that actually, surprisingly, I haven't seen addressed very much in the literature. As I'll get into later, there's a lot on spillover, positive and negative spillover, but these are usually subsequent behaviors, often unrelated domains, and not looking at this question of one or many requests. So that's one of the big questions in this project. So we're looking at how we can nudge sustainable behavior change, and it's a longitudinal study. What's going to stick over time, right? Because again, coming back to this movie, are you going to remember all of these things? Probably not. But what is going to still stick with you a year later, right? And is it better to focus on pro-social motivation, what's good for the world, pro-self motivation, or both together? And finally, yeah, how many questions? Do you ask a million things or just one? And in terms of practical impact, we're focusing on laundry behavior, which is something that we hadn't really thought about going into it, but the power company said, hey, this actually contributes a fair amount of energy, at least in Canada. I don't know how much in Switzerland, because most people use hot air drying, and this uses a lot of energy, and also hot water laundry, which also uses a lot of energy. And by the way, what are the norms here in Switzerland? Like, would you say you're always doing hot air drying or always hang drying, or kind of a mix, sometimes one, sometimes the other? Hang drying. So, okay, so a mixture, yeah. But this is really something that varies regionally, right? Like when we moved into our apartment in Italy, that we living temporarily, we're in Milan, and there is no hot air dryer, right? It's only the washing machine, and it's expected you'll always hang dry everything, right? Whereas I would say in Vancouver, it's more the opposite, actually. It's probably more like 95% hot air dry to deal with your laundry. So in any case, laundry overall represents, this, by estimates of our power company, about 20 to 30% of home energy usage in houses that use electric water heating. And there's not much in the literature about changing laundry behavior. And we like this behavior kind of as a test example because it's something people do regularly, and we can theoretically measure each time somebody does laundry in their energy usage, because it makes a spike, right? When you run the dryer, it makes a big spike in your energy usage. So in theory, we can objectively see how often someone is doing hot air laundry. However, in practice, it gets pretty complicated because there are many things that make spikes, not just hot air dryer, but also running the dishwasher, vacuuming, right? Maybe your robot vacuum turned on and did something, and many other things. So it's a bit tricky in practice, but at least we have some objective means to identify this behavior and not only rely on self-report. So today, in the talk today, I'll give you a little bit of literature review in this area, and then I'll walk you through a few pilot studies we did, some of the background before the main study. Then the main study design, our hypotheses, our results in several different areas, because we have intentions to change behavior, then we have self-reports of behavior change, and we have objective data of behavior change, and these sneak preview don't always line up, right? So often, especially in the environmental domain, we like to think we will do always the right thing and improve, and maybe it doesn't really materialize, right? We have this intention action gap. So, and then finally, we have some summary and results, of course. So literature review, what has been done already in this area? In general, so my kind of academic area is on nudges, which is like, oh, you try to make like a kind of seemingly small structural change, a choice architecture change, like a default at the right time, and get hopefully a big behavior change. And however, normally these types of interventions are only looking at one target behavior and don't see, well, what happens then a month later or a year later. And when it comes to sustainability, we really want to know this, right? So a few examples of what does work is we know that in the energy domain, competitions work. So if I see how much energy I'm using, and then I also see how much Anna and Emmanuel are using, and then we can compare, and then we get into a little game to see who can save more energy. And this is effective, and it does work for the long term, but only as long as the competition is maintained, right? And I know this is something Emmanuel and I were talking about earlier. What happens after it ends? Well, if the competition is over, then I stop saving energy, right? So it's only effective as long as it's in place. Another one that we know is another nudge that is effective in the long term is defaults for green energy. So you can make it, some people have a mix in their energy consumption. Is that a choice that you have here in Switzerland, where you can like maybe pay extra to get green energy versus the fossil fuel energy?
The default is in the middle, actually.
And the default's in the middle. Yeah, interesting. So, and this is something that there have been studies on and shown, indeed, if you default people into the, you typically more expensive green energy, then it raises the percentage of people who use it, and that this also does last over time. Right, so there's been, these are some of the positive results in this area. However, we also know that there are spillover effects, both positive and negative. So if you, maybe you get an electric vehicle, but then you feel you're entitled to drive more or fly more, right? Or you're doing some research on environmental stuff, and so you drive up to Switzerland to give a talk. You feel justified because you're working on green stuff. So this is an example of negative spillover, right? Where you do a good behavior in one domain and it leads to maybe a not as good behavior in another area. You also can have positive spillover, right? Where maybe it becomes part of your identity. You're eating plant-based food, you're a vegetarian, and so maybe you're just doing it for health reasons, but you also know it has environmental benefits, and so being an environmentalist becomes part of your identity, and so then you also do more green energy and other things, right? Like this is to come back to marketing. I'm partly a marketing professor. If you've heard of the foot in the door effect, you like get people to agree to a small thing, it becomes part of who they are, and then later it can lead to bigger things. So it's actually, the literature is actually a bit of a mess on spillover effects, right? Because it's not totally clear when you get one or the other. You get consistency effects or licensing. Half the time one thing seems to help another, half the time it hurts, and we don't see the null results because they're not published. So, so there's been a lot of research on spillovers, but it's always, until now, as far as we've seen, on, okay, you do one thing, how does that affect something later? Right? And so what we're going to be investigating in our project here is, as I mentioned, simultaneous. If you're asking somebody, hey, do these 4 things, is that better or worse than just saying, hey, do this one thing? But we will also look at some other long-term spillovers. And finally, we'll be looking at monetary versus environmental motivation. There's been, if you want somebody to save energy, change their behavior, is it better to appeal to their pocketbooks and what's good for them personally or what's good for the world? Again, it will vary from study to study, but there's not been much in terms of longitudinally. I forgot to mention here, there was a meta-analysis on spillover effects. Sorry, going back to here, looking across papers shows that like overall, you get good spillover effects on intentions, or that you do one thing, it makes you want to do other good things, but small negative effects on actual behavior and policy support, right? So this really speaks to the importance of differentiating intentions and behavior, which is what we'll do in this study also. Oh yeah, so coming back to money versus environment, we know that both of these can improve environmental efficient behaviors and purchases, but we don't really as much know as how these play out in the long run. Maybe the post, what's good for you is good right away. Maybe what's good for the environment works better in the long term, or vice versa. We're not sure. It's pretty open area. So again, that's what we're looking at here. Here's an example of previous research, what's come out of this, looking at financial or environmental framing. This is a car label in Canada, but you have a similar one in the US. And I don't know if you have the same kind of thing in Europe or not when you're buying a car, but this shows you, okay, how much fuel does this use? Right? Like how many liters do you use per 100 kilometers, right? And you can see, oh, this one uses 9 liters per 100 kilometers. And then it will also tell you what's your annual fuel cost estimated, right? And it also tells you how much CO2 is produced by this car. And what's interesting is these are all just the same thing represented in different ways, right? Because the amount of fuel determines your fuel cost and also determines your CO2 emissions. But yet this presenting it the same thing in all these different ways is better than just one or the other, because first of all, some people care only about money, some people care only about the environment, and so each person will kind of choose the one that matters to them. And you also get some amount of double counting where you're like, oh, I save, use less fuel and I save money and it's better for the world. Awesome, right? So you can actually double count, get extra credit. And so this is one good example from previous research about how representing the same attribute multiple ways is actually better. This was Christoph Ungemacht, who's nearby. He's doing some stuff in Germany on environmental decision-making, Adrian Camilleri, Rick Larrick. And so, yeah, we're building on this and looking at the long-term outcomes. So we started, as I mentioned, we had this great opportunity. And so we wanted to start out by doing some pilot surveys. We used Prolific Academic, which is a great resource I recommend, by the way. Before I used to more often use mTurk. Any of you used mTurk before? Yeah. How about who's used Prolific? Okay, good. Yeah, so you're all on board. Prolific is where it's at now. And so we piloted a few different things, and you can target to Canadians, so we would get the relevant population. And we had this idea of maybe using a decal. So a decal or decal is like a sticker, right? It's basically just like a sticks by itself. And it could be a long-term lasting nudge, because if you put it on your laundry machine, then every day you do laundry, you'll see it's like a little reminder, right? So a key tenet of nudging in choice architecture is to reach people in the right place at the right time. And so if you just give them a message like an advertisement they see once, probably not going to stick with them. But if it's something that you see every time you're doing laundry, week after week after week, this may add up. And in fact, you could even get larger effects over time than you do at the beginning through a cumulative effect. So we had this idea of using decals that would be a constant reminder, hopefully attractive, low cost. But then what we wanted to pilot test, what is the right message? And so we actually ran 6 different pilot surveys to pre-test different things on Prolific. And I'll walk you through a couple of them now. And as I mentioned, we'll have you make predictions. So pay attention and see which one do you think will work best, or if you think maybe the control condition will work best. Sometimes you get backfire effects, right? People don't like being told what to do, or null results, always very likely when you're doing behavioral research, right? So null result is always also a prediction you can make. So we ran this with 600 Canadian people. And we were just early on trying lots of different ideas. We actually had 13 different conditions. So we were looking at gain versus loss framing, because we know from behavioral research, people tend to respond more to losses. We were looking at the time horizon, whether we look at like how much money you save per load of laundry versus over 10 years, how much money could you save? Because this would be a much bigger number, right? Maybe it'd be more motivating if it's a 10-year amount. And we looked at if you're motivating people by money or the energy they could save or both, and compared that to a control condition. So we looked at all these in a factorial way. And then we were measuring 4 key behaviors. And these were also the behaviors we have in our field studies. So I'll spend a little more time to explain them now. One was asking people to re-wear clothes until they're dirty. And this is my favorite environmental behavior, by the way, because it's one case where doing the right thing for the world is also doing the lazy thing, right? So often it takes extra effort to do something good for the environment. And now if you see me wearing the same shirt 2 days in a row, it's not that I'm lazy, it's just because I care so much about the planet, right? Yeah, exactly. Well, that's why we say until dirty, right? If it's dirty, yes, you should wash it. But sometimes, if you have a sweater, you have an undershirt, you can wear the same sweater again. Maybe don't have to wash it again quite as much. And then the second item is combining loads, right? So rather than running, lots of loads with a few items per load. And like, we never did this, but we found out even some close friends of ours that will keep anonymous, they may run a load of laundry for like just one item, right? Because they're like, oh, I want to wear this tomorrow. And so I'll run a load. And some people just like run them all willy-nilly. So it's better if you can combine them. It's more efficient, right? And then the other big ones are washing laundry in cold water and hang dry laundry inside or outside more often. And you don't have to do these 100% of the time, but doing them more often does save energy. So,
David?
Yes.
Yeah, just a quick question. Can you somehow, from an objective standpoint, say put them into an order, basically? So is there one that, if you look at the average population, the average citizen, where most people could save most energy?
Yeah.
Is it difficult to...
Yeah, it's this one. Yeah, because the hang drying, you're basically either using the hot air dryer or not. The hot air dryer uses the most energy. And here you're going from using it a lot to basically none, right? So, I mean, re-wearing is good, but like there's a limit, right? So maybe you can wear it a little bit more, but here you can essentially, like, let's say you switch from always hot air dry to always hang dry, you'd cut your energy usage probably by, I don't know, 75% or something on your laundry usage, because the washing machine uses a bunch, but the hot air dryer, it's like using the energy to create the heat is the big thing.
And just as a quick follow-up, so are you then also focusing more on that one BV?
Yes. Yes, exactly. So yeah, you'll see later not in the pilot studies, not so much, but in the main study, we'll be pulling out and especially examining that. And that indeed is the one when we're comparing 1 versus 4, we're going to compare, what if we only ask you to do the hard one? Versus if we ask you to do all of these, maybe you're like, well, I can do the easy one and I'll ignore the hard one, right? Because this is the most impactful, also probably takes the most effort, right? Because you have to put everything up and wait, and right? And so, yeah, indeed, this will be a special focus. Yeah, thanks.
And a similar question, but it's a bit of an extension. So are these just different levels of escalation, or are these also, is this a conceptual logic behind these measures? Because they're also not entirely independent, so you have to watch your clothes until you can hang them out to dry outside. So I wonder what's the conceptual logic between them, and is there some level of escalation that you have in mind of how they line up?
Yeah, I guess we weren't thinking about escalation. How did we come up with these was honestly by working with our partner, the energy company, asking them like what behaviors would help to save energy. And they'd been working a little bit in this area already. And then as well doing extra research to see, well, what actually does make a difference. I don't know, you have anything else?
We also thought they partner well, and in some ways they're chronologically ordered. So you re-wear them till they're dirty, then you combine them from the small loads into the larger loads. Those two are pre-laundry behaviors that you have to think about outside of laundry, but then when you get to the laundry machine, then you see the cold water and then the hang dry. So they also kind of go in a chronological order. And then the idea of like needing to refresh on them, in some way we think the cold water and the hang dry would be most effective on the machine, because that's like the exact right time for that reminder. But the re-wear clothes is so dirty, if you've already got it in the laundry basket, it's probably not take it out and put it back on. So yeah, so we thought they partnered well together, but then the last two are most timely.
Yeah, so I guess we see them as like complementary, but yeah, not necessarily like, although yeah, it's true that it is kind of easiest to hardest, I guess. I don't know. Okay, so piloting. We tried a few different messages to convince people to do these 4 behaviors. And here they're not actually doing them. They just have to say, I would do it, right? This is very cheap talk, right? All you have to say is, sure, I'd do that. So which message do you think will work the best? Here, we said, hey, change your laundry habits, and we said what those habits were. And to save, we estimated $2,129 over 10 years. This is what the energy company said it would be. Energy is actually kind of cheap around Vancouver. We have abundant hydroelectric power. And so the energy savings, I'm sure, would be bigger, especially with the war in Ukraine and everything that's been happening with energy prices these days. But at this time, this was the real amount that you would save if you did all of these behaviors, right? Rewearing your clothes, combine loads, wash in cold water, and hang dry, and you could save $2,000 over 10 years. Or we have a same thing, but just a cost framing. It's kind of a subtle change, right? Change your habits to reduce your costs, right? Reduce your losses. So this is gains versus losses. Then we also, instead of the money, we can look at the environmental impacts, CO2 impacts. Change your laundry habits to save 95,000 grams of CO2 over 10 years. Or change your laundry habits to reduce your CO2 by 95,000 grams. Or we have the combined, right? Hey, it's saving you money and it's also saving the environment, or reducing your costs and reducing the environmental pollution. So we have these 6 versions, or we have a control, which is we don't give any message. And we asked people, hey, how willing would you be to put a decal with this message on your laundry? And how willing would you be to engage in these laundry behaviors that I just mentioned, right? So intention to engage in the behaviors. And now we'll do a poll. We'll get you to make a guess of which one do you think led to the highest intentions for changing your laundry behavior?
Question.
Yes, please.
What's the reason why you took this time frame? Because for me, it seems pretty long.
Yeah. And we chose it because in a previous study we had done with energy efficient purchases, so buying light bulbs, we had used it and it had worked well because it was like basically makes a bigger number and makes you think more long term. But yeah, maybe in the case of laundry, it's too long, right? Yeah, the idea is to kind of scale up and get a big number, because if you look at like the per load amount, it's like, I don't remember, like save 5 cents.
I agree for light bulbs, this would make
Yeah.
sense because this is a lifespan maybe.
Yeah.
But it feels a bit, yeah, for me, 10 years.
Yeah.
Trying to survive the next 10 minutes. So
Yeah. So, all right, so let's get your guesses. So who thinks the control condition of not saying anything worked the best? No? Okay. How about saving money? All right. How about reducing your financial costs? No. All right. How about helping the environment, saving CO2? No. And how about reducing CO2 loss? All right. How about combining, hey, you save money and save the environment, and reducing your money loss and reducing environmental loss? Okay. And who predicts null results? All right.
So it's not published yet, right?
So null results have it. This was indeed a null result. This is partly why I wanted to bring this, show this study, is because this was in the lead up to the field study. We piloted a lot of things, and we had a lot of things we thought would work. Like we were all ready to run this in our field study, right? Like financial motivators, CO2, right? That's what comes to mind when you think of energy, is money and climate. But we found actually that didn't move people at all. It didn't even move their intentions, right? And so none of them were significantly more effective than control. If we fish around, like look at every single p-value and try to hack something, then the combined motivation of money plus environment was marginally more effective for cold water only. So if you pick that one, maybe you have a little something, but it's a pretty, not even less than 0.05. Anyway, yes?
I was just wondering, did you pre-screen people coming from British Columbia?
This one, I think, was just Canadian, not BC. Yeah.
So before going into the results, do you think that people living in this coastal region might be structurally different in terms of the way of how they think about the environment? Some people maybe have moved there because they want to be, I don't know, more in nature, and hence whatever you're studying is somewhat of a function of self-selection, that people move into this area. So once you study this in the field experiment, there might be some selection effects? Do you think this is possible? Or?
I think not only possible, but very likely. The BC in general tends to be more on the left politically and more pro-environmental. And although there are more, rural areas that tend to be more conservative and maybe not as environmental, but overall the province is very left. And especially, as you'll see in a moment, the people in our field study, they're kind of volunteering for a study on energy efficiency. Right. So especially not only in BC, but specifically our sample, I think, was very pro-environmental, very energy efficient, to the point that actually the energy company was guessing we wouldn't find anything in general because they're already doing everything, right? These are people who already care about saving money and saving the environment. And I think that's actually partly why we get the null results here, is because everybody knows saving energy saves money, right? And they know it's all about climate, and giving them that information is not adding anything new. Right. And that's, I think, why it wasn't effective, is because it's already baked in. Right. So you have to, if you want to change behavior, you need to come up with something novel, which I'll show you in the next pilot. Yeah, something that people haven't considered before. Yeah. Yes.
Because out of curiosity, because you mentioned you tested a lot of things.
Yes.
And something when you mentioned laundry, there's a view with a room, a room with a viewpoint paper, right? Where they try something with, I guess, hotel laundry. So if you at one point try norms, like your neighbor is not using hot laundry, or what's their reasoning for exactly that way of testing gain, loss, money, energy? Because you could have also said, okay, let's replicate.
Yeah, well, that's partly why, exactly, because the social norms, that's already been pretty studied within energy, this thing of like comparing how much energy you're using to your neighbors. And
that's integrated in everyone's bill already, so they're already exposed to that with every billing cycle.
Yeah, so we wanted to do something new. Yeah, but yeah, it's a good point that we do know that this should work comparing to your neighbors. Yeah, and indeed this was already in play in this province.
Residential energies where it was someone in a standalone house, so that the energy meter data, we were limited to standalone homes where people would have their own washer dryer inside the house. Because that's the energy meter data that we would be able to access.
Yeah. Yes.
My question goes in a similar direction. First of all, have you tested different metrics for the grams of CO2? Because I think, when I see it, typically it's more in tons. And the question is, what does, 9 point whatever tons mean? Have you tested, okay, this saves you like 3 soccer fields of Amazon forest, or have you tested this or have you considered other metrics? And the second question would be, goes into your direction, have you normalized the money, because maybe $2,000 over 10 years is not very significant for one family, but for the others it is, I don't know, a larger percentage. So have you corrected for income there?
In this pilot study, I don't think we looked at it as a function of income, but because we got a null result on it, it would require, if it did work for some people, it would require actually a negative effect for the others, right? Which I guess is possible, but yeah. Yeah, I mean, we certainly, could or should look at that, yeah. But yeah, I don't think we've looked at it in that pilot.
Plan was, if this worked, we were going to have it customized per user, so it wasn't like 2,000 on average, it would be for your
for your house.
A different direction.
No, because it makes me think, it's like, Johannes, you can, maybe I'm already at the limit, I'm a computer scientist, we often
optimizing everything.
Optimizing things.
Yeah.
The class. But I was thinking, if it would say, okay, over 10 years you can buy a Tesla, or whatever,
Yeah, exactly.
Because then this would make me think, and this 10 years, 2000 was like.
Yeah. Yeah. True.
It was not,
Yeah, I think if it were enough money, then I think it would motivate people. And I think the other thing, as I mentioned, is honestly, I think the money already is motivating people. Like when we've heard from anecdotally, we've had a lot of communications with our participants. They emailed us a lot. We've had like free response feedback, and actually they do care about saving money for sure, right? But it's just that this is already top of mind for them, right? They already see their bill every month, or so for the especially for these people you're mentioning who maybe are lower income, they're really scraping to get by. They're focused on the money already, and then adding in this information isn't kind of anything new for them. I think that's really why it wasn't effective. Yeah.
I'm just curious, but did you, in the feedback you got from was there anything in there on people basically arguing, because that's a train of thought that came to my mind of saying, well, we are in BC, we're using water hydrogen power. Why should I give a shit if I'm saving money? It's not much money.
Yeah.
It's not actually.
Well, it's your money, right? So you should.
But it's like a lot of income then.
Yeah.
10 years. That's, people might just say it's not bad for the environment.
Yeah.
Is that a thought that people had?
I mean, my impression from the communications with people is they do care both about the money and varyingly about the environment. Because especially in our field study, it's this, saving energy, saving sample, right? So these are like, they are focused on saving energy, and they do care about the money. But yeah, environment definitely was a mix, with some of them saying, oh, I want to do my part, and others are saying like, oh, it's a government conspiracy to, ruin our lives, all this climate hoax stuff that's out there as well.
So in BC, if we don't use all the energy, they sell it to other places, so it does still have environmental impacts. That the less that's used in BC, the more that's sold to places that would be using non-hydro.
Yeah, because Alberta is right next to us, and Alberta is all like tar sands and oil and stuff. And so, yeah, if we save energy, it helps. But I don't know how to the extent people really realize that. I think some people probably have this same feeling of like, hey, it's hydro, who cares? It's renewable, right? Doesn't really matter. Yeah. Which numbers? Mm-hmm.
The question doesn't make a difference if it's $2,000 or $5,000.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we were using the real numbers, so we didn't play with them too much because we wanted the actual estimates. But we did play with like, oh, is it per load or per year or per 10 years? And coming back to your question, and yeah, that didn't matter. Basically, it just didn't work regardless of the scaling. So we tried some things that didn't work. And so we kind of went and did more qualitative work. We asked people, what do you care about when you're doing laundry? And they're like, oh, I care about money and the environment. I care about my clothing, that it will stay good and, last a long time and not change sizes or whatever. And one of the things we asked them about that people said they didn't care about was microplastics. We said, how much do you care about microplastics when you're doing laundry? And they're like, not at all. And then this was actually then an insight for us in that maybe this is something we should try, because the reason people don't care about microplastics in laundry is because they're not even thinking about it. They don't even know what it is, what's the connection to laundry. And so it's like, paradoxically, the thing that people said didn't matter, maybe we should test that. And so we did, and we also thought maybe some more vivid imagery would help. So this is from an example from a later pilot study 4, where we had these different animals like a sea turtle, polar bears, orcas. Here's a janky drawing that I put together. We had like a contest between the researchers to see who could come up with the best intervention. And we were again testing things like saving energy or saving money in one condition. In another condition, we were testing about fighting microplastics, right? This one says, oh, did you know when you're doing laundry, actually microplastics come out, which is bad for the environment, harms marine life. So save your clothes, fight the planet, fight microplastics. Or actually, this microplastics thing can be framed as being good for the planet or good for your clothes, because when microplastics come out of your clothing or microfibers come out, then it means your clothing is not lasting as long. So you can actually save your clothes and save the planet and fight microplastics by doing these behaviors. So we did some testing, and indeed in this next pilot study, these microplastics motivation messages worked well. They worked better than any of the ones talking about money or the environment. What's good for the planet and good for your clothes, fighting microplastics. So this was kind of why we seized on this, and now you'll see, and we did a couple more pilots to really refine things, and finally we will come to the main study, and now you know the secret background when you see the stimuli. Well, why is it set up in this way? It came actually from this series of 6 pilot studies. Yes.
And it's so fascinating that you came up with this idea. I mean, you tested all these different inventions before, it didn't work, null effect.
Yeah.
You're making the switch toward microplastics.
Yeah.
Realize that people are not even thinking and talking about it.
Yeah,
So
because they said they don't care about it. That's why. Yeah.
How do you come up with this idea? Like people are not thinking about it. Did you have this intuition? Well, maybe we would put like a magnifying glass in microplastics. Maybe this is an important thing, but why? Like, how did you come up with the idea to make such a radical shift?
I think it partly came because one of our collaborators, Jane Gao, she had done a project looking at the impact of plastics recycling using vivid imagery of like sea turtles, et cetera, being damaged by like, the like plastic drink rings and stuff. So I think we had that in the back of our head as, and then you, I think, were really.
That was my bet. I mean, it was something it really stood out just that microplastics was so different from everything else, right? People are like, oh yeah, money, environment, right? And then there's this one that was like, it just was not like the rest, right? And I was thinking about it like, why, these people say they care about the environment. Why is microplastics way down here? This doesn't really make sense. And then I was like, oh, it must be because they don't really even know what it is, right? And so it was just a good a hunch then that we tried in the pilot testing, and yeah, it turned out it worked. So yeah.
Energy impacts everyone, but the microplastics hurt the little turtle.
Yeah. 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 Well, that was most of the animals we tried. Yeah, and it did actually work better with like the turtle than like even like the groups of animals. Like the group of polar bears didn't work as well, or the group of orcas didn't work as well. So yeah. Yeah.
So that's very a function of where people live. So when they're living in the coastal area, I could see that the turtles work well. Not sure how you explain it. The whales are not working well. But when people are, I don't know, living somewhere, I don't know,
Inland, yeah.
inland, the polar bears.
We haven't done a geographic, yeah.
2-day drive inland.
Yeah. But yeah, we need to start taking notes on the ideas for analyses. Can you take some? Thanks. Because yeah, that's something, we have their location, right? We have everybody's actually home address because we had to mail them decals, so we know where everybody lives in our study, and we could calculate, yeah, how far they are if they're in the coast or not. That could be interesting. Yeah, Emmanuel.
Speaking about the process behind the project, just seen that you pre-registered that study, which makes a lot of sense. I'm wondering, have you also considered going one step further to do a register report? Rise up from
right.
the whole theory, predictions, just get up the results.
Yeah.
That sounds like a project that would be quite applicable.
Yeah, I think registered reports are very cool. However, with this project, there's like there are so many parts, and I think we were scrambling to even get the pre-registration done correctly and in time. And because it is a study over 1 year with data collections immediately, then we did a 3-month follow-up, 6-month, 9-month, and 1 year. And then we have both the intentions, the behavioral reports, and the objective data. I think it would have been cool to do a registered report, but honestly, we just didn't have our crap together to plan everything out that well and register it all in advance. But yeah, that would have been, I think registered reports are very cool, and it's a great way to get it. Both you trust the results more, and then also you're kind of guaranteed the publication, right? And it also deals with the file drawer problem of, well, in real life, a lot of things are null results, right? And these don't come out typically because they just don't get published. But with a registered report, you're getting the real deal. I think it's, yeah, very cool.
Especially one of those.
We also didn't know enough about the energy data because we'd only had small samples of the data. And so we were told that the laundry would show large spikes every time someone turned on their washing machines, which turns out not to be true. So,
well, they get spikes all the time, right? I mean, yeah. Yeah.
I think we didn't know enough about the data set from the partner.
Yeah.
We knew about that.
Yeah. Yes, Johannes.
Curious for to see the results, and maybe my question is too early, but I was wondering, are you adding, what degree of complexity are you adding by refocusing on microplastic? Because, I have no idea about the causal effects. But doesn't it depend on then also on the type of clothes you wash and stuff you push in the washing machine, maybe the water, the pH value in the water, you know, I don't know, or the temperature, right? You know.
Yeah, and what we're doing is giving people the data of on average, right? So we're not customizing it to each garment or to each person's personal clothing mix. So certainly for some, the information will be an underestimate of how many microplastics are coming out. For others, it's an overestimate of how many microplastics are coming out. We're just giving like the typical data.
Wash water, you get more microplastics.
Exactly. Yeah. If you're doing basically the hot water means more microplastics come out, as well as the hot air drying also means more microplastics come out compared to if you hang dry. So that's and again, also it's also a function of the number of loads that you do. That's why we did this, is because again, if you just rewear your clothes, and because the washing, you know, it agitates the clothes, and with both the heat and the agitation, that's what causes like little bits to come out, right, which degrades your clothing. So it doesn't last as long, not good for your clothing, and not as good for the environment. And so yeah, we got the data we gave people was again the real data as best we could find. You know, we went to like previous studies of washing, and in fact, even a Canadian study of washing and microplastics, and we got some pretty up-to-date data on the average amount of microplastics that come out. But yeah, of course, it will vary tremendously from garment to garment, right? I'm sure if a higher quality thing probably doesn't lose as much as quickly as if you got something from Shein that just falls apart. So.
Sorry, just before you
Yes.
to the main study, another question from the chat on the quality.
Oh, wonderful. Hello, Zoom chat.
From a person working at Logitech. Did you look at social listening to spot emerging niche themes and discussions, I guess, relating to social media discussions? Did you look at that as well?
Not really. I mean, we talked to people, we did more qualitative stuff, but yeah, that's a nice idea, and we didn't. But yeah, thanks for the idea.
Like Dave said, we had a lot of open response questions of surveys that we tried to code and see what themes came out. And then also the energy partner has an ear to the ground on what's trendy. So not directly, but kind of indirectly.
Yeah, through our partner, because that's true. BC Hydro, they are like, monitoring social, so indirectly. And I wanted to say, by the way, I've been a lifelong Logitech user, in fact, growing up. No, it's true. I only found out talking to Emmanuel. I didn't realize that it's from a Swiss company, and I have it even on my computer here using Logitech forever. So fun to be here. So on to the main study. So, and it was pre-registered. We also have a number of exploratory analyses, right? So I'll show you our pre-registered analyses plus additional exploratory analyses. And we did this with 1,200 BC Hydro customers. So these are just energy customers recruited from their Team PowerSmart program, and they completed the first survey as well as additional follow-up surveys every 3 months for 1 year. The requirement is they must have a washing machine and a clothes dryer and pay their own bill so that they are aware, they know how much energy they're using. And then it was more women than men. I mean, I guess there's a gender bias in who's doing laundry and participating in the study. And you can also see it's an older sample, right? These are people volunteering their time and that care about saving energy, saving money. So it's older than your maybe typical enteric or prolific sample. And our big research questions, just to remind you, because we've been talking about all these different ideas, are what's the long-term impact? Like, can a decal be a useful nudge? Should we focus on a pro-environmental message, pro-self, or both? And should we request many different behaviors or just focus on the hard one of the hang drying? And yeah, these are our target behaviors. And so here's an overview of our study design. I'll go into more detail in just a minute and show you the actual stimuli, but first just an overview. We have a control condition, which is where basically there's nothing, we just measure behavior. Then we have another control condition where we give them a QR code decal. So they put a little sticker on their laundry that I'll show you in a second. We ask them to scan it every time they do their laundry, so we get a more exact measure of laundry behavior. But we know even that might change behavior, right? Just the fact that you're measuring it. So that's why we have this kind of careful measurement only control. So 2 controls. Then we have a decal with a turtle, ask them to change all 4 of the behaviors. One with a fleece, so it has the sweater and says, hey, do this because it's good for your clothing, and change all the behaviors. We have the turtle and the fleece, and then together, and them together plus focusing on the one. So you can see it's not a fully like balanced fully factorial design, and that is because we had limits in terms of sample size. We wanted to have enough power, and so we have, for example, if you want to see the effect of 4 behaviors versus 1, then you have to compare these conditions, right? We don't have 4 versus 1 of turtle only, for example, right? So we trying to strike a balance in terms of investigating things we cared about while still having enough sample size in each condition. And the DVs, we measured what will you do, what did you do before, and the ongoing log I mentioned, where people are scanning each time they do laundry. And we have the objective energy data on the hourly level for 1 year, including we had got 1 year of history for each person. So we can look at the year-over-year change from the previous year to the current year. How much energy did they use? Yes.
Just a quick question. Position 2 to 6, you always have the QR code scan.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll show you the details right now. So this is
Here's of 6, you at the self-scanning Robert.
exactly. So this is what the decal looks like in the control condition. So we just told them, hey, as part of participating, we'll mail you this decal to put on your washer or dryer, which will look like this. And that is what it looked like. We sent it to them, and they had the QR code. It also had a URL that they could use because some people don't like to scan a QR code. So instead they could type this direct manually into their browser. Yeah. Yeah, I have a slide on that later. But anecdotally also, some people hated QR codes. Like we probably had some dropouts because we just had the QR codes here. Some people are like, I'll never, it's maybe some of this government conspiracy stuff, and like they're like, no, I'll never use the QR code. I'm dropping out of your study. So yeah, so it was a good thing we at least had the option to not use it. And okay, here is the turtle fighting microplastics save the environment condition. And so when people did the survey at the beginning, we gave them this information, which is true on average. When you machine wash and dry your clothes with hot water and hot air, microplastics come out of your clothes. In fact, experts say that between 700,000 and 12 million microfibers can be shed during one single load of laundry. You can see the range is quite big, right? It depends on what you have. And it is estimated that laundry is responsible for 35% of microplastics in our oceans, seriously harming sea turtles and other marine life. And you can save our planet by rewearing your clothes more often, combining loads, washing laundry with cold water, and hanging clothes to dry rather than machine drying your clothes. And you can see we have here, it's a request from a sea turtle. Please do these behaviors. Thank you. And we had the help of a graphic designer also, by the way. That's why it looks nice. Like I can't make something that looks this nice. So we had the idea, and we actually hired somebody to help make a nice looking decal.
So this information they have to log into a computer to see. On the web, there's a website where they go, and how easy for them is to see that they have to click to different places, so it just comes up.
Yeah, so that's a good question. So at the beginning, we invited people to participate in a study, right? So they know they're going to be in a study, and they said, yes, I want to participate. We also did, by the way, pay people a little bit for participating. We gave them, I think, $2 per survey plus a $10 bonus if they completed the whole thing. That was like for 1 year of participation. So $20 for 1 year, it's pretty marginal, right? But we did have a little bit of a financial incentive to participate in the study. And so then basically people got an email, and they clicked on the link in the email, which brought them to a Qualtrics survey. I'm sure many of you use Qualtrics. And then they got some information, and we could ask them some questions. We had to get their address, get their informed consent. They say, yes, you can use my, look at my energy data. Yes, blah, 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 blah. And then as part of that survey, yes, we showed them this information, and we said, hey, we're going to send you this decal. Right. And then indeed, we mailed them the decal in the mail. And after that, it's kind of up to them to actually attach it on their machine or not. And yeah.
And then they stick some this QR code on the washing machine.
Yeah.
Do you have this image as well in there?
Yes. This image. This is exactly what the decal looks like. This is exactly it. Yeah. And I guess the one other thing is we gave them each a code, a PIN, because each person has a unique identifier. So it also then included a little code number here that was personalized. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Two quick questions. They're a bit more on the methodological side. So, how did you think about the sampling strategy for that project? Did you do some propensity score matching to make sure that people with similar energy usage are stratified in the sample, then you randomly assign them to the different conditions, or that you just send it out and so you look at it after the fact and hopefully there are no differences between conditions? So
Yeah, it was the latter. Yeah, we just did like pure randomization, and then yeah, afterwards we checked some things. I think probably it would be better to do it the former way of matching on some things and then randomizing. But there are also, the trouble is there are also many unobservable things, right? Like psychological things like maybe environmentalism, which we don't know. And so ideally randomization should take care of all of that. So we just did a regular old pure RCT. Yeah.
So no stratification based on data
Anything.
that could be there from the company.
No, I don't. Yeah, we didn't, right? Yeah, we just did totally random. Yeah.
And second quick follow-up about attrition. So was attrition the same across the conditions that you had, or
it was mostly the same. There's one condition where there was selective attrition, which I'll show you towards the end. It was basically, there was one condition where, yeah, people were less likely to be logging and like putting up the sticker and logging and reporting a little bit. So I'll be reporting the sample sizes in each condition as we go. And overall, it's not significantly different across conditions, but there is one that I'll highlight later. Yeah.
There's the attrition from the surveys, which isn't as bad, but the attrition from logging laundry is about, as you might imagine, quite significant. People get tired of logging their laundry.
Yeah.
But it's a significant amount of attrition, but not that.
Yeah. There's attrition across the board over time for sure. But yeah, it's the same across conditions for the most part. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm.
But is the logging just pressing the button saying I did logging, or you collect the parameters or the settings for the?
Not collecting the settings. I'll show you the exact logging interface in a little bit. Yeah.
We did ask about surveys, so we asked about like a top-loading machine or a front-loading machine. What are your default settings? We asked a lot in the surveys, but on the logging, we tried to make it so that it was like 2 clicks, unless they did a weird setup.
Yeah. Yeah, basically they would scan it and that would take them to a website which pre-filled things. It pre-filled their PIN code after they had entered it once. Then after that, it always refilled and it would automatically enter the current time. But if somebody wanted to, like, let's say if they forgot to log, they could scan it later and then change the time manually to a previous time. And it would also say, how many loads are you doing of washing and drying? And then they could, it would default to 1 load of washing, 1 hot air drying, and then they could change it if they wanted to. So if in the simple case, it was like scan, submit, or in the more complicated case, it could be scan, change things, and then submit.
Just what I wanted to ask is that you mentioned environmentally. By having large data set and randomization, that maybe in the course of your experiment, did you try to collect some data about level of environment? Because especially with the nudging, you will have a huge nudging effect with people who are not positive towards environmentalism. You know, a gap will be quite big.
Yeah.
Even if you see that you did nudge or not, but it will be quite big.
Yeah.
People are already there; they don't need any nudging. So that is, I think, quite an important factor in this experiment.
Yeah.
Do you think that it was addressed just by randomization, or you collected some data, or you have some interview or something?
So yeah, we did collect environmental attitudes, and that's the same across the conditions because we randomized people, and so it's roughly equivalent. With that said, yeah, we are in the middle of still analyzing this now, and it's a good point that probably people who are higher in environmentalism, you'd expect they would respond more to the sea turtle, right? And that's yeah, it's on our list. That's a great suggestion. So we have that condition, then we have the same thing, except instead of being focused on the environment, it's focusing on what's good for your clothes, right? When you do hot air and hot machine washing, microplastics come out, and this breaks down the fabric in your clothes, damaging it and shortening the amount of time you'll be able to enjoy wearing your clothes. So you can save your clothes by doing all these things. Save your clothes, fight microplastics. Here's a request from your clothes. Do these behaviors, thank you. And then we have the same thing, except it has both, right? So good for the environment and good for your clothes. And then there's this kind of joint photo of both request from your clothes and from the sea turtle. So looking at intentions. So cheap talk, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna change your behavior? And what I'm showing you here is a big table of results. So just to orient you a bit, we asked people a 1 to 5 question for each behavior. How much are you going to do this? Where 1 is, I'm going to do this behavior much less often, like I'm going to hang dry less often. 3 means I'm going to do about the same. And 5 means I'm going to do this behavior much more often. And so looking at this table, the first thing you notice is that everything is over 3. Right? Which means on average, people are saying they're going to do these good behaviors more often, even in the control condition where we didn't ask them to do any particular behaviors, but people can kind of guess, maybe why are they asking me about these behaviors? Well, they're probably good, so I'll say I'm going to do them more often. So basically all of these are significantly higher than 3. So everyone says they're going to do good stuff more often. All right. And the next thing I want to point out is you have here the 2 control conditions, then here are the decals. And then the subscripts here show differences from the 2 controls. So if there's a subscript 1, it means it's significantly higher than the pure control. Subscript 2 means it's higher than the QR only control. And so what you can see is, for example, if you show people the sea turtle and ask them to change these 4 behaviors, then people, yes, compared to control, they're significantly higher in intentions to do cold water, to rewear, to combine loads. Here, this was not significant on the hang dry, but it's pretty close. If you get just 1 more hundredth, that's significant. And then this is the average of all the behaviors. And overall, what you can see is that if you give people the decal, they say they're going to do everything. Even in this case, we just asked them to hang dry. And then people said, oh yeah, I'm also gonna use cold water, and I'm also gonna rewear, and I'm also gonna combine loads. And although it was the strongest, in fact, on intentions on the hang dry specifically. So very broadly, all of these decals were quite good at increasing intentions above control to do these laundry behaviors. Yes, Emmanuel?
The fact that all these things are above 3, I just wonder, you have some sort of proper baseline where you can take control of things like near measurement bias or effect, right? So the fact that you ask them, if I understood correctly, even in control, you ask them about these behaviors and the intentions, right? That itself could happen. So do you have any way to potentially compare all of these conditions to a baseline where nothing happens? I guess in terms of energy consumption, to take the average.
Yes.
Compare that to that average.
So for energy consumption, we can. Because we do have some people, we actually have a bunch of people where the emails bounced because the energy company gave us emails, but then some people, they're like spam filters or whatever, they never actually got the email, so they never even saw the first survey, and we still have their objective energy data because they had previously told the energy company that they could share their energy data with us. And so we do on the objective energy data have a absolutely no interaction control, except that they said they would participate in this study.
It is very clear when you start putting the data about the behavior. When I think the next
yeah, we measure behavior later. Yeah. Yeah. We have other more objective measures later. That's why this is going to be a contrast between intention and actual behavior. But
so just follow up on that. That would be interesting, I think, right? Compare that to that baseline to see whether we're really asking people about their intention to do something actually changes something compared to that.
Yeah, that would be cool, but yeah, I can tell you it didn't change actual behaviors. That would have been cool. Yeah. Okay, so summary here of the intention behavior. All of the decals increased intentions, more or less, to improve all of these behaviors roughly equally effectively. And I have a summary chart I'm going to come back to a few times because we have all these different measures. So you can see here, this is the intentions, and we have these 4 experimental conditions: turtle plus bundle, fleece plus bundle, which bundle means bundle of 4 questions, requests, turtle plus fleece plus bundle, and turtle plus fleece plus hang dry. And you can see they're all kind of effective at increasing intentions and roughly equally to each other. So yes?
How much within subject variation do you see? So, I mean, one way to look at the data is to see whether there's a shift in terms of the average of the person.
Yeah.
We often don't look at changes in terms of variation. But I think another outcome that was also interesting is there maybe a slight shift in the average, that people have more pro-environmental intentions, but also later, hopefully, maybe there's a small effect. But even if there's not a small effect, as you're indicating, maybe there's a shift in the variation within subject level.
Right.
Do you see that within subject variation, both with the perception outcomes and also with the behavioral outcomes you're showing?
I mean, there's definitely a lot of differences across people for sure, but in terms of measuring differences in variance across condition, is that what you're essentially saying? That maybe in one condition there would be less variability and and over time, yeah, we haven't really looked into that yet. So yeah, that's a good suggestion.
Subject variation is the dependent variable.
Yeah, because I mean that's essentially what we're looking at, and I'll get to in a minute. Is like, how much did they change compared, like their energy usage this year compared to last year, right? So yeah, we're looking at difference in energy usage year over year, so that somewhat gets at this. Yeah. So next result is self-report results, where we asked people, how much did you do this, right? In the previous months, you know, how often did you use cold water? How often did you hang dry? Out of all of your loads of laundry, what percentage of the time did you do these behaviors? So this is just retrospective self-report, and we have this at 4 different times over time. So this is the survey 1, 2, 3, and 4. This is 4 different quarters over the course of the year. And then you can see this is 50% and 70%. So around, most people were saying like, oh, I did these behaviors about 60% of the time. And we found some trends, like marginal trends in these self-reported retrospective self-reports. And I'm going to zoom in on where it's marginally significant. What you can see is in the control conditions, so the QR scan only control, and the other one's off the screen somewhere. The blue line is the pure control. People at the beginning, they said they were doing it like 60% of the time, and then maybe it like went down over the course of the study. Basically, people, and this will be a recurring theme, by the way, everybody just got worse over time. People, they did these behaviors on average less often. They used more energy, including in the control condition. Something about, I don't know, the end of the pandemic and stuff being crazy. And so you can see that between time 1 and time 4, the control conditions went down. Whereas the message about with the sea turtle saying, hey, this is good for the environment, please do these 4 behaviors, or the sea turtle plus fleece plus hang dry message, these ones, people did actually in their retrospective self-reports, they said, oh yeah, I'm still doing that as much as I was at the beginning. So you had this kind of widening over time, where at the beginning they were the same, and then gradually they became different in their retrospective self-reports. This is pretty messy though, because this is just memory, right? We haven't gotten to the logging yet. So yes.
Seems you can treat S1 as baseline.
Yes.
Yeah. There's the same issue about also contributing the same issue about the social desirability.
Yeah.
When you ask people retrospectively, people always try to put themselves in a good light.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I didn't do, but
yeah.
Unintentionally can happen.
Yeah, I agree. So
Like others are they all self-reported data, or
in this graph everything is self-reported, but we have some non-self-report data later. Yeah. Yeah.
S1, not a baseline, right? That was measured after 3 months.
Which one was this? This is
at the very beginning.
Yeah, at the beginning. Yeah, I guess we don't have S5 in here yet, huh? Yeah.
It's actually 15.
Yeah, so we need to update this. Yes.
So the scale you use for engagement
is how often did you do these behaviors?
One of these behaviors for the bundle message and how hang dry in the hang dry condition, or was it also you all?
Yeah, we asked everybody about every behavior, right? So even in the hang dry condition, even though we only asked them for hang drying, but still that, yeah, and they also reported doing some of these other things probably just because we were asking, right? And again, this has all these like self-report, presentational, maybe inaccurate issues, and that's why it will be important to get these more objective measures that we will get to right next. So let's push along. But summary, these deco messages marginally improved self-reported retrospective behaviors over time. So you can see here's our like ongoing summary of like which ones got significant results. Here they were only marginally significant, which is why I used the cross. So now we're getting closer to objective behavior. We have the logging results now, which is the QR scan. Every time people did laundry, we asked them to scan, and you can see that they used the QR code. This is the result Kirsten was mentioning. 68% of the time, actually a third of the sample preferred to every time type in the URL manually. That was easier than scanning the QR code, right? So some people, like for me, using QR code, very easy. For some people, it is still an issue. So it's always important to have a manual URL backup.
This is a side question, and maybe we should use our time. How have you measured that? Because what I would do is I would create a bookmark.
Yeah.
So URL, I would just have my own like
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, it may have been bookmark also, but then it would look at whatever the first one was, because essentially these are different URLs. There's a little thing here that says and $QR code equals yes in the get variable, if you know what that is. So if they first used the QR code and bookmarked off the QR code, then it would show as QR code every time. Yeah, right. Yeah, we don't know. Yeah.
I'm just want to be,
Yeah, they may not have technically typed it every time, but at least they were not. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, I would encourage you to always have a backup that doesn't require it. So, and then when they visited the either QR code or via the link, this is what they saw, and you can see with the pop-up menu selected here, it'd have their PIN, which is a number. The first time they have to enter it, and after that, it's automatically entered every time. And then it has the current day and time, which they can change if they want to, but it defaults to the current day and time. And then ask them how many loads of machine wash and number of loads of machine dry. And then they can get more information or email us. So yeah, we got a lot of emails. We still get them sometimes. Yeah, it's been like this almost a year. Yeah, not quite, like 9 months now since the study has ended, and we still get emails from our participants. They're very keen. Yes. Slide before, yeah. No, yeah, we were debating, like, it would have been nice to have that, but we were trying to make this simple and easy as possible, and we decided to go for not measuring that. We do, of course, have the objective energy data to look at, which should be correlated with how full it is, and we had the and we did have that fullness in this retrospective data, right? We said, how often did you do full loads versus, but no, in the ongoing logging, that's a good point. We just said how many loads.
Originally to log for a full year, a long commitments we wanted to go with revenue over depth. We ended up releasing them from 9 months because they.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, you mentioned that you get a lot of emails or got a lot of emails. Can you tag them to the different treatments?
After a certain point, it was actually at the beginning, because we emailed people with just a broad email with the subject line was the same for everybody, which was really annoying actually, because then when they replied, we had this giant thread with everybody with the same subject line. It was a nightmare. And then we started actually partway through the study, we sent individualized emails with a different subject line for each person that has their personal identifying number in it, which indicates their condition to us as well. So starting like halfway through the study. Oh yeah, we could figure it out eventually. Match the email address. Yeah, we could figure it out. Yeah, we could actually do that.
Are you using that?
No, how many emails by condition? We haven't.
Maybe, or even sentiment analysis. Maybe you of those people feel more sorry for turtle.
Yeah.
Others just want to save money. I don't know.
Yeah, a lot of just individual cases, but we could look at overall sentiment and number by condition. That would be cool. Yeah. Okay, so here we are, like in a kind of middle ground. It's like more objective, but still they have to scan it. And you can see the differences between conditions. And here it's not a significant difference, but it is a trend that in a later study will become significant. This is the condition where you get a bit more dropout for some reason. The turtle plus clothes plus asking them, it's like the everything condition where we say do it for your clothes and the environment and do these 4 things. there's somewhat of a tendency for people not to participate as much in this condition relative to the others. Maybe we're asking too much from people. So, and what you can see is in terms of number of loads washing, when we say, hey, do this for the environment and do these 4 behaviors, indeed, people logged fewer loads washed, whereas that didn't happen when we focused only on the hang drying. They didn't log fewer loads of washing. So when we asked them to only to hang dry, they didn't change their washing behavior. When we asked them to do all 4 behaviors, they did change their washing behavior, but only if it was focused on the environment, on the turtle. If we were asking them to do it also for your clothing, then it kind of washed it out and was not significantly different than control. You can see it's directionally lower than control, but not significantly different. So whereas if we look at the drying, how often are you, and when we say dry, of course, we mean machine dry. There, if we focus just on the drying and ask them to hang dry with the turtle and the clothes, then they logged fewer dried loads. And likewise, if we are focused on the environment and do all 4 behaviors, they also did the hang drying more often. They did fewer machine dries. There's still an issue here, though. If there's some ambiguity still, there's still maybe some self-report issues of anytime, if they're not reporting laundry or drying, is it somewhat strategic, either intentionally or unintentionally, maybe subconsciously they report things more favorably just because it looks better. And so another measure that we looked at was the ratio of dried to washed, because they always reported them together, like one scan, you do one scan to report both washing and drying. And so if you let's say you just forgot to report or something like that, that would affect both of them easily. So the ratio of dryer to wash is a nice measure to help take care of some of the self-report things. And again, we see a significant difference in the ratio of hot air drying to loads of laundry for both focusing on hang drying and ask for all 4 things and focusing on the environment. So in summary, 2 of the decal messages improved laundry behaviors: microplastics turtle plus the bundled message decreased washing and drying, and microplastics turtle plus fleece plus hang dry message increased drying only. Here's our updated scorecard for the logging behavior. And now we'll finally get to the metered data. We have 10 minutes left. So the energy meter results, we looked at them a couple of different ways. So first we have the broad across all energy usage across the whole house. And then we'll zoom in on specifically trying to get at just the laundry behaviors. So when we look at total energy used last year versus this year across all conditions, basically null results, right? So if you look at total household energy usage, this is the amount of energy, this is like kilowatt hours per day, which is like this one. This is the control condition. In the year before the study, people used about 23 kilowatt hours per day, which is below the national average of Canada, by the way, which is like 29 kilowatt hours per day. So these are like super energy saving people. For reference, Texas, the average is 39 kilowatt hours per day. So this is per household. Yeah, this is all at the household level. Yeah, this is all at the household level. Yeah. And then this is the post, which is in the 1 year during the study, how much they used. And then this column is the change. And you can see that all of these numbers are positive, which meant that over the study period from the previous year, this is like 2020 to 2021 to 2022, everybody was using more energy overall, right, on average. And then you can see the differences as a function of condition are non-significant. Basically, there's a lot of noise. Some people went down, some people went up. And what you can see, if you're just going to look at directionally, the best one was actually QR decal control, showed the least negative change, but it's not any different than any of the other ones. So like overall, like energy usage in the house went up and didn't matter which decal they had. Yeah. The overall trending.
Whether the trend in more energy consumption is still less than overall Canada.
Oh, how much our sample went up relative to out of sample? Haven't looked at that. No. Yeah, I actually don't know what the overall trends were. I would assume. I mean, in this. Yeah, this should be pretty similar. Yeah, but there's. Yeah, but they're also in the like power saver sample. So we could try to look at like out of that, try to get some like baseline data. Yeah.
Before pandemic, during pandemic,
It's 2020. It's 2021 to 2022. Like basically, what did we start in June? 2020, May.
It's been things were still mostly from home until when people were more out of them.
Yeah, which I find surprising because it's actually people are getting out of the home more and energy usage is going up.
There's also 2022 disasters in BC where there's like a
Heat dome.
cold spell. So some of like the across conditions increase to be related to weather.
Yeah, overall, the biggest predictor of energy usage is weather for sure. Like I did a graph of like daily temperature compared to daily energy usage, partly just as a sanity check, but it's very like close, it tracks very closely, right? When it's a cold snap, you can see everybody's energy goes way, way up. Yeah.
Can you factor out what goes to the washing machine and the dryer? Because this is the overall.
Yes, that's correct. Yes. So that's the next slide. Perfect question. So why don't we get to that right now so we don't have to keep everybody too long. And so we have another analysis. This one I find maybe there's something here. I also find it a little bit dubious. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on this way of analyzing the data. Here we're trying to isolate the laundry and drying behavior. And so what we did is we looked only among people logging behavior. And then so we can look only at the hours around when they're logging it. So if they say, hey, I'm doing laundry at this time, then we look at energy usage only during this time, because the part of the trouble is most of the time people aren't doing laundry, right? It's like once or twice a week in most of these houses. And so that's why there's just like a lot of noise. And so this data that I'm showing you now is only among people logging and only in the time windows around when they report doing laundry. And here we do have, as I mentioned, a difference in the dropout rate among the sample, where the condition where we said, hey, do it for the environment and for your clothing and do everything, there's some dropout. Maybe people were feeling guilty about it or not doing it, and so they didn't report. So this condition maybe interpret with a grain of salt, but the other ones, indeed, we found similar results to the logging behavior I showed you before, where here we're looking at energy, objective energy data among the logging people during the logging period. And you see the people who were told to save the turtle and do all 4 behaviors. There was a marginal effect on washing energy and a significant effect on drying energy. And the ratio also was significant of the drying energy to loads of washing. And if we told them to do just the drying, we didn't change washing energy and we did change drying energy, and we had the significant ratio there as well. So yes.
What does significant mean in comparison to before, in comparison to the control group, or is it difference in differences?
Yeah, it's that. It's that one. Yeah. So here, yeah, or no, this one is not. Yeah, this one is just looking, I take it back. This is just compared to the control group. So we said basically how much energy did they use compared to the control group, yeah, over the same time period. No, yeah, it is difference in differences. Sorry, I'm trying to remember, because this is basically a more modeling where we looked at the energy over the previous year and compared to this year, and then comparing the control to the treatment. Yeah, so it's difference in differences. Yeah. Okay, so summary of this of the more objective data. If we look at the whole house, all energy, we see no difference. And this could be partly just due to noisiness, that there's so much differences between people. It's also positive it's negative spillover, right? That they're putting all this effort into hang drying and then they're turning up the temperature to help their clothes dry faster. That's one of the things we've been enjoying actually here in Europe, is like hanging up our towels on the heater, and then they get nice and warm and toasty. And I think at least once we've like turned the heat up a little bit just to make our towels nice and dry and warm. So that could be partly what was happening here, why there's no overall energy usage. But if we do isolate and just look at the times they were doing laundry, 2 conditions were effective: the turtle plus the bundled message, and turtle plus fleece plus hang dry. Here is the overall scorecard, and I made this light green because, again, if we're not looking at total energy usage but just during the laundry times, then again we found that which ones were effective. So study summary and conclusions, kind of wrapping up. In the context of this motivated sample of BC laundry doers over a period of 1 year, we do believe that decals can be an effective tool for nudging behavior, that you see it over time. It helps remind you each time. I think it helps a lot that it's attractive. You know, why did the turtle work better? Is it that people care more about the environment? It also may have been this, that it's nice to look at the turtle. The sweater is a little boring, and so this, you know, draws your attention, and each time you think about it. And we did see in that retrospective data that the difference actually grew a bit bigger over time. And we see a similar trend also in the objective data, that it emerges more. Didn't have time to get into today, but it emerges more over the period of the study. The difference actually grows larger. So this is actually a case where, you know, longitudinal can actually be stronger than just a one-time measure. And intentions often don't translate into real behavior change, right? Remember at the beginning, everybody said they were going to do everything better. Actually, everybody got worse over time. It was just that some of our key interventions helped to maintain some behavior. And changes in laundry behavior weren't detectable in total household energy usage, perhaps from spillover and licensing. So the most effective thing we found was combining a single novel motivator, right, with multiple behavior change requests. Actually asking people to do all 4 things was better than just asking for just the hang dry. And I think it's because of what Kirsten was saying, that these 4 things are more complementary than competitive, because you do them in sequence. First you rewear, then you combine loads, then you do cold water, then you hang dry. And so they actually can complement each other as a sequence and as a bundle. Whereas I think maybe if we asked for 4 behaviors that you had to do that were competitive with each other, probably that wouldn't have worked so well. Another kind of key takeaway for us from this is that sometimes energy motivations are actually not the best way to change energy behaviors, right? We came into this, as you know, because we showed you the pilot data at the beginning. We're like, oh, money, climate change, that's what you do for energy, right? That wasn't effective at all, I think, because people are already aware of them. So coming up with something new that really wasn't about energy at all, but it led to the most energy efficient behaviors. Yeah.
Just wondering, why did you choose like this romantic illustration? You know, the turtle looks great somewhere, please.
Yeah, as opposed to like a dying turtle that's strangling on the microplastics. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are a few reasons for this. So one is that we need people to put this on their own washing machine. And this is a voluntary behavior on their part, right? And so I think if it's an attractive image, they're more likely to display it in their house. And then also maybe more likely to engage with it on a voluntary basis. There's some data showing that there is kind of an inverted U relationship with negativity, where like some amount of negativity is helpful. If you get too over the top, then people disengage and you get reactance, right? So our idea here was, or they will just take it down. They won't look at it. Yeah. Well, that would be good then, right? If they don't do but yeah, this is something we discussed. Yeah, and we didn't test the scary one in the field. I think we did it in some pilot studies. We tried some negative imagery, and yeah, it wasn't working as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You can just see this image.
Mm-hmm.
If you just look at the turtle, the face of the turtle, it looks like a sad turtle.
Oh, yeah, his mouth is a little, yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. Right.
Because if you know from that magic itself, if you start pushing too much, there's no magic effect.
Right.
It could be one of the things.
Yeah. And so I think we're done. The very last note is just they are actually rolling it out. Sometimes people always ask, like, is this being implemented? They didn't go with the turtle for some reason. They went with an orca because it's our local symbol. But they did go with the microplastics message, and they are actually rolling it out and sending it to people. And so it is being done. Thank you so much for hosting me. Sorry for being over time. Thank you, Emmanuel. Thank you to the center.
Actually, that's from insight to impact, right?
Yes. Oh, thanks.